It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation.
Welcome to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Welcome to our family room. By the way, there's a meatloaf in the oven right now.
It's very distracting. So it smells wonderful in here right now.
Yeah, it's just finished baking, so it smells really, really good. And, you know, we're so ready for lunch, but that will wait.
Yes.
It will be there when we're done.
Because we've got some exciting stuff to talk about today. First, just a quick reminder, you can get all of our programs, Unraveling Revelation, Sci Friday, my weekly podcast, our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, at our free mobile app.
PID Radio.
Oh, yeah, and the classic podcast episodes that led to what we're doing today, PID Radio, and the old episodes of A View from the Bunker.
Oh, yeah.
Those are available, audio episodes, at our mobile app. You'll find a link at our website, our main website, gilberthouse.org/app. It's free, iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets as well. You can also get it for Roku and Apple TV and put it up on the big screen.
How do you remember all those words?
I say it a lot. And I've been doing this, as Josh Peck is happy to remind me, since before he was born.
Yeah, back in the Stone Age when you still had to, yeah.
That's right, yes. We used a big,
Where you had a dinosaur inside of a fake TV.
A little megaphone, with a dinosaur, But you'll find all of that at our website, gilberthouse.org. All of our archives are there as well. So if you want to start with episode 1 and go through where we are now, you can do that there as well. Revelation 15.
Boy,
and the connections back to the Old Testament.
Since we have been doing that, well, it all started with our Bible study, which you can get on the app, by the way. There were a lot of things that had to do with Moses. Right. And that whole turnaround moment when it was the first time that as we were going through it, the first read through, and we said, wait a minute, has it always been in there? Mm-hmm. And since then we've run into dozens and dozens of, has that always been in there? Mm-hmm. In fact, we ran into one last week on this very program. But the Lord has shown us that it's all connected. Right. That is why we began this entire adventure more than 2 years ago in Genesis.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand the context, the Old Testament, and why there is a war going on. Mm-hmm. It isn't just because Adam bit into an apple.
No, there's a lot more to it than that. And the deeper we get into this, the more I realize that this war against death is not just a metaphorical struggle. It's not, we'll all suffer physical death, and so God. No, there was literally a war against a god of death. Mm-hmm. And it really signaled by Moses and his song in Deuteronomy 32, and the location there near Mount Nebo, which when you read the end of chapter 32 of Deuteronomy, you see that as soon as he completes the song, God says to Moses, okay, now climb this mountain of Avarim. And as we've said before, Avarim is the Hebrew word translated travelers by Ezekiel, which was a Canaanite term used to describe the demonic spirits of the giants destroyed in the flood. Now, the Canaanites didn't see them in that way. The Canaanites, the Amorites, thought that they were their ancestral kings, the mighty men who were of old, men of renown.
They were mistaken.
They were mistaken. And Isaiah mocks them in Isaiah chapter 14, where the rebel from Eden is cast down, and the spirits, all who were kings of the nations, rise up and say, oh, you're here now. Look, you're just as weak as we are, with worms for coverings and maggots for your bed, or whatever. And this was a long-running war that Moses signaled there at this location, which we believe the site of Sodom. And this is the working theory that we're under. We pray that the team working there under Dr. Stephen Collins will find the archives at Tal El Hammam and see if we can confirm which temple, who was worshipped in the temple of Sodom.
Yes. By the way, there have been other things discovered there that have not yet gone into publication. They're still in peer review. We haven't told you about those yet, but we know about them.
Yeah.
It's another reason why we really believe Tal El Hammam is it. By the way, in the 19th century, you were talking about Glick last week, and we mentioned Warren and Condor. Well, they and others traveled that whole area for the American Exploration Society and for the Palestine Exploration Fund. Honestly, they were building roads and surveying and things like that. But they sent over men who believed. They truly were believers, and they wanted to understand the Bible in context.
Right.
And many of them wrote about that area and said that there wasn't just Tal El Hammam. There were 5 tells there.
Yes.
5 cities destroyed, 5 kings, but also it was believed that they had found ancient Zor, which was the city to which Lot was taken with his daughters to take refuge because he didn't feel comfortable up in that cave for very long. So he went to Zor. And it had to have been close enough for him to run to.
Right. And
not destroyed.
And not destroyed. If you've not seen our interviews with Dr. Collins or the Director of Scientific Analysis from Tal El Hammam, Dr. Philip Sylvia, go back into the archives on our app or at Roku and look at the Sci Friday episodes with those interviews because they explain the scientific evidence behind the destruction of that site northeast of the Dead Sea. And you'll see that they found salt at the site of Tal El Hammam, 8 miles from the Dead Sea, that chemically, when analyzed, matches exactly the salt and sulfates composition of the Dead Sea.
Absolutely.
So suddenly we've got a scientific explanation for Lot's wife.
There were a lot of scientific efforts put into that dig, and it's still ongoing. It is ongoing.
And if you want to find out more, you can just check out the progress at digsodom.com and maybe even volunteer for a dig in 2024 or in the future. But what's really fascinating is that this location, again, the stations of the Exodus point to something supernatural there. Ezekiel points to this region as the valley of the travelers, or the valley of those who cross over east of the sea.
I would even say this is the valley of the shadow of death.
You are probably right about that. I think the Jordan Valley as a whole can count as that. And
ancient Bashan.
Well, yes, but here's why I say that, because we've talked before about Ezekiel and Elijah both departing this world from the plains of Moab. Moses was brought up Mount Nebo.
You're squeaking.
Yeah, I need to fix that.
We bought these secondhand. I think we paid like $20 for each piece.
Moses was brought up that mountain and said, climb this mountain of the travelers, this mountain of the Avarim, and get your look at the Holy Land. And from there you can see Sodom, which is just about 6 miles from Mount Nebo. And then he's buried somewhere in the plains of Moab. Well, that's where he departed this. Elijah was caught up in a chariot of fire just after crossing the Jordan from Jericho, which means he was in that same place because Jericho and Tal El Hammam, or Sodom, were basically due east and west of each other. Both of them appear at Mount Hermon on the north end, because that's where the Jordan emerges from that cave called the Grotto of Pan. When Jesus is transfigured on that mountain, they appear there. But Jesus began his ministry in the region of Bashan. And this is due to the research of Claude Condor in 1877.
No, these books are free. You can find them in Google Books.
Right.
You could just download bunches of them.
His report from 1877, which built on an earlier report from 1875, he was looking for the location where John the Baptist began his work. John 1, verse 28, I'm going to look it up to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn, began his ministry there. Yes, verse 28. John was basically baptizing and telling the Pharisees, look, I baptize with water, but one is coming who stands among you, stands one you do not know, even he who comes after me, the strap of whose sandal I am not worthy to untie. These things took place in Bethany across the Jordan, where John was baptizing. Well, Jesus appears the next day, and John says, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. It's traditionally been taught that this location is near Jericho, near the south end of the Jordan River. In fact, the United Nations has declared a World Heritage Site on the Jordan side of the river there.
Yeah.
But Conder in 1877 said the Greek word Bethania, that was translated as Bethany in most of our Bibles,
Betania.
is Bethania, the Greek name of Bashan.
Yes.
And that makes sense because Jesus called his first disciples in John 1, beginning in verse 35, from the area north of the Sea of Galilee.
Yes, exactly.
Bethsaida and then Capernaum,
Yes.
where he settled. And in fact, Matthew makes it clear that his settling at Capernaum after John the Baptist was arrested was in fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy that the people living in the region and shadow of death, on them a light has dawned.
Yes, in the valley of the shadow of death.
Valley of the shadow of death.
Important to know.
But again, because the area at the south end, near Sodom, the plains of Moab, where Ezekiel places the valley of the travelers, the valley of the demons, really, that whole valley is filled with dolmens.
It's a huge, we're talking thousands of them.
Yes, yeah, but they've estimated like 25,000 in the Jordan Valley, between Mount Hermon and the Dead Sea. This was a cult devoted to the veneration of the dead ancestors. And it's very, very ancient. The most recent excavations at sites like Gilgal Rephaim, Dr. Michael Freakman back in 2012 excavated there and concluded that it was most likely for the cult of the dead ancestors. It's a massive megalithic structure around a central tomb. And I didn't recognize it when we were there, but in the center core of that monument is a dolmen.
Yes, yes.
They call it the threshold stone. No, it's not a threshold stone. That's the capstone of a half-buried dolmen.
Exactly. And buried dolmens, that's not unusual. In fact, I would argue that the cairn in the center of the circle of dolmens that were described by Conder and Warren was probably a buried massive dolmen.
Yeah, yeah. And this is something that's spread all over the world. I mean, we saw a dolmen at the site of Monte Dakota on the island of Sardinia, which dates back to almost 4,000 BC.
Yes, right there by a ziggurat.
Right, and that's about the same time that Gilgal Rephaim was being constructed. Well before the historic era. Just the point is that this was something that sprang up not long after Noah's flood, when suddenly people were spreading across the earth and saying, hey, what about those old gods that used to teach us all these magical things?
Back in the good old days.
Now we need to summon them from the netherworld.
Now, the reason I wanted to make sure we covered that a little bit today was because, A, Song of Moses.
Yes.
Original time, Deuteronomy 32, they were camped right there.
Right there.
Now it's repeated. It's quoted that they do the Song of Moses, sing the Song of Moses, those who are victorious over the beast. Now we're going to get these vials being poured out. I think that the Lord has gotten the attention of the beast and all of his little minions and said, I told you back in Deuteronomy 32 that I was coming for you. I told you I was on my way, and yet you didn't listen. You thought somehow you could beat me. Guess what? You want the firstborn son or the son of the cup to pour out libations to keep you alive. I'm going to pour out my libation to make sure you never come back, that you are forever dead.
Yeah. The cult of the dead reversed in Revelation. We'll continue our discussion straight ahead on Unraveling Revelation.
Hi, everybody. Believe it or not, this is October, and that means you get a brand new GHTV special offer.
We're approaching Halloween, the time of year when the world around us is focused on ghosts and goblins and devils and demons.
But they're real.
They're real, and we'd like to give you good information about those entities with our October special. First, our book Veneration, where we analyze the ancient cult of the Nephilim, the origin of demons exposed in this book. Vicki Joy Anderson's important book, They Only Come Out at Night, about night terrors and sleep paralysis.
You need this book at home for your kids and grandkids. Trust me, it is a great book.
And 7 hours of audio interviews with the late Dr. Michael Heiser about the nature of the unseen realm.
Oh, this is a collector's disc.
It really is. Altogether, these 3 items purchased separately worth $65 during the month of October, just $35 plus shipping and handling. Take advantage of this because this is good, solid, scholarly information, especially the content from Dr. Heiser.
It is, and particularly this month, you want to be armed with the truth when your family asks, what about witches? What about wizards? What about these things at Halloween? What do we do with this? It's a time to teach.
Absolutely. Take advantage of our October special offer, Veneration, They Only Come Out at Night, and The Unseen Adversary, yours for just $35 plus shipping and handling only at gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
Boom. I'll tell you what, right before the break, Derek mentioned reversing this promise, this practice. There is a book that if you don't have it, you really need it in your library, Reversing Hermon, by Michael Heiser.
Mm-hmm.
It really, that and The Unseen Realm are 2 books that really started us down this whole track.
But we were just so curious about the Rephaim and why these weird entities, mysterious entities keep showing up in the Bible, especially when you start looking behind the words for the dead, the shades, the departed, etc. The Rephaim, it's only been within the last 40 years that scholars have admitted, yeah, there was a cult of the dead in ancient Israel. The Israelites got involved in it. That led to our book Veneration, where we go into this ritual called the kispum, which was an ancient Amorite practice where every month on the night of no moon, the 30th day of the month, they had to summon the ancestors by name, and then they poured out a libation after feeding them. That's what the teraphim, the household idols, were used for. They would take a little piece of bread, smear it on the face.
Sometimes they'd put him in a little chair.
Put him in a little chair, sometimes a little model of the chariot, because the chariot is what carried the souls of the dead to the netherworld.
Yes.
And then they would pour out a drink offering, and that was what Sharon referenced earlier. She mentioned son of the cup. That was a term used for the eldest son who was responsible for performing this ritual. If your descendants didn't perform the ritual, it was believed in ancient Mesopotamia, you would cease to be, because there would be no one to keep your name in remembrance. In fact, that's why Absalom, the son of David, built a pillar for himself in the Valley of the Kings, because he had no son to keep his name in remembrance. So,
and it's started me down the path of, I've given several presentations now on the 23rd Psalm, and I refer to that Psalm a lot in the Red Wing Saga, because that and Romans 8:28 are sort of the core of the idea in what I write, spiritual warfare, that the idea that the Lord takes us into the valley of shadow of death leads us there for a purpose. It's not to punish us. It's not to scare us. It teaches us, but it also teaches the fallen realm.
Teaches them, yes.
It teaches the fallen realm and shows them the future, says, these are the ones I'm going to resurrect. These are the ones that I love. Why? Because they believed in me. They have trusted in my salvation, what I provided for them. You guys didn't appreciate what you had. You totally rebelled, and you refuse to this very day. You still try to harass my imagers. You're trying to create your own imagers. And one of the ways they do that is to constantly refresh their own, it's like you have to refresh an app or refresh your page. You have to refresh the page of the entity by this ritual that keeps them alive.
Right.
No, the Lord is saying, that is coming for you. One day I'm going to take your ritual and I'm going to turn it on its head. And that's what we see in Revelation 15.
I just think that's so astonishing. And again, the connection to all of those dolmens there at the base of Sodom, in that valley as a whole, and on the Golan Heights, ancient Bashan.
Yes.
And the reference to Psalm 23 is brilliant. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies.
Dolmen means table.
It's, just astonishing.
You give me a cup, and it's not one you fill monthly. It's overflowing constantly. It never, ever isn't full.
It's why the statues that were placed in the memorial gardens for the deceased kings of the Amorites from the time of the judges, even before that, but down to the time of Isaiah, and it included the king and perhaps his wife or consort sitting there holding a cup, because that cup needed to be refilled, it was believed, in order to provide them sustenance
Like a
and
little
drink.
beggar sitting there with a little tin cup.
Yes.
Can you fill us?
Yeah, fill a cup. Well, that's what this whole that's what the psalm means. My cup overflows.
Yes. Oh, and I'm anointed.
Yes.
I'm a king. The fallen realm sees that the humans who trust in Jesus, we're the ones who have eternal life. We're the ones who are part of the divine assembly. So in verse 5, we've seen that the sanctuary of the tent of witness in heaven was opened.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an echo of what we saw in Deuteronomy 32, where they were at the time. And out of the sanctuary came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues, clothed in pure, bright linen. This is the angels, not the plagues.
Mm-hmm.
With golden sashes around their chests.
Mm-hmm. And one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever.
That's another one of those this morning I said to you, has that always been in there, that it was
Right.
the living creature?
That would be one of the
that gives
cherubim.
them? Yeah. Yeah. One of the throne guardians Derek and I have talked about before, which was well known in the Mesopotamian and the whole Levant area. They knew what a throne guardian was. Essentially, it was this massive beast,
Like a bull-like sphinx.
but its purpose was to warn you, this area is holy, you're not allowed in here, I'm trying to keep you alive.
Yeah. You're inside the area that is so sacred that if you transgress and cross over the boundary, you will die.
That's why they say holy, holy, holy over and over again. And this one is the one of them, doesn't say which one of the 4, has these plagues, and they are put into fiale. They're put into
Yes.
vials or phials or bowls, little saucers. It's a parallel to those cups.
That's really fascinating, that this, again, is, and we'll see this more explicitly. We're not going to have time to get into chapter 16 this week, I don't think, but another example of God taking something that the enemy had convinced humanity to do for years and years. And this even goes back to Mount Hermon, and coming back to Sir Charles Warren, who was one of the experts sent by the Palestine Exploration Fund into the land in the 1860s and 1870s. He found the Misha Stela. He was known for Warren's shaft, the water course that led up into the city that perhaps David's general Joab used to get up into the city. But he also climbed Mount Hermon, and we've talked about this a number of times on this program and on Sci Friday.
And I've written about it in the Red Wing Saga. He shows
Right.
up as one of the characters because he was really in London, really involved with the Ripper murders.
But in 1869, September of 1869, he climbed Mount Hermon, which is no easy thing because it's a
No.
9,200-foot mountain, very rugged. It only the snow up there only melts around August to allow you to access the summit. But he found a temple up there, which is the highest man-made place of worship on earth. And in the temple, he found that stela that suggests that the Greeks, even in the time of Alexander the Great and in the time of the John Hyrcanus and the Hasmonean kings of Judah before the Romans came in, that the Greeks knew that the mountain was where the great god El or Dagon or Enlil.
They remembered. They
right,
remembered the
Shemyaza.
story because
Right.
this had been pre-flood.
Exactly. So this was known not just to the Hebrews, but known to the pagans around ancient Israel, well, around all the entire Mediterranean. But Warren also mentioned something very interesting, and I'll put an image of his drawing of the site here, that the summit of Mount Hermon itself is scooped out like a giant
Like
bowl.
a bowl, exactly.
And in a paper about El's abode, the abode of the dwelling place of the Canaanite creator god El, a scholar named Edward Lipinski wrote that it appears that it was set up it had been scooped out to receive a drink offering. And he noted that the word Yarid in Hebrew, which is the origin of the word Jordan, it means to come down, was the name of a libation offering that was well known in the ancient world and documented in some ancient texts. That this practice of pouring out a drink offering to a deity was called the Yarid. In fact, he suggests that in Enoch, where it says the watchers descended in the days of Jared, actually meant in the days of the Yarid, when they were performing this drink offering and carrying water up to the summit of Mount Hermon and pouring it out.
Yes.
And Warren then, in his report for the Palestine Exploration Fund in 1870, suggested that because there was a stone wall that forced the pilgrims to approach the summit in a counterclockwise fashion, if that was perhaps, first of all, for that ritual, but secondly, the origin of the practice of circumambulating the Kaaba in a counterclockwise fashion in Mecca.
I think that's entirely possible, and circumambulation is a worldwide phenomenon in a number of cultures.
Right.
What I find interesting about it as well is that threshing floors, are portals to the other side.
Yes.
And they sort of have that galaxy spiral look to them. And many of them go counterclockwise.
Fascinating connections, and not immediately obvious unless we dig into the cultures and religions of the ancient world to realize that this practice of pouring out a libation for the spirit realm was ingrained in the culture that produced Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Amorites believed that this was so important that if you didn't have children like Abraham and Sarah, you had to contract with somebody to perform the rituals after you died, or you would cease to be. This was still known in the Christian era, which is why the earliest Christian churches in Rome were built in cemeteries, because the first Christians wouldn't give up the practice of holding the ritual meal for their ancestors.
That is so strange.
So this is what is behind what's going on here and the pouring out of these offerings, the seven bowls, vials of God's wrath.
Oh, yes, indeed. And these, I wonder if one reason that we're seeing the angels wearing golden sashes and the golden bowls, this is a pure, it's a noble, very pure metal. And if it's pure gold, it never tarnishes, ever. And I think it represents the purity of God, the purity of his purpose, the purity of his promises, the holiness of the Lord.
I think you're right. The verse 8, just to finish out Revelation 15, the sanctuary was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one could enter the sanctuary until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were finished. And this is imagery, again, co-opted by the pagans, the fallen Elohim who presented themselves as the gods of the ancient world. The Romans believed that the temple of Janus, the two-headed god, was opened prior to battle. But that's just a counterfeit of what is really coming on the earth when God prepares to pour out his judgment. And again, it's a reversal of that ancient ritual of pouring out a drink offering to the fallen Elohim and their hybrid demon spawn, the spirits of the Rephaim.
That is so true. And what is our response to this? The Lord has told us all of this in advance, no so we can sit and be scholarly and, connect this dot to that. It's so we would understand the importance of today. You have today to preach the gospel to your family, to your friends, to anybody the Lord brings into your path. You have today to accept him if you yourself don't know Jesus.
Right.
Accept him now, because today may be all we have.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. This is Unraveling Revelation.